Hello, we are Chapter 6, and we are going to be talking about biological and psychological explanations. And my name is Eric, and I'll be talking about the biological explanations.
And my name is Christina, and I'll be talking about neurochemical factors.
And my name is Brock Ernest, and I'll talk about psychology and sociology.
Okay, so in biological explanations, phrenology is one of the earliest biological explanations during the mid-1700s to the mid-1800s. It dealt with the size and shape of the skull. Franz Gold thought that there were three major regions that control the behavioral characteristics: intellectual, moral, and lower. The lower type would be common in criminals. Phrenologists thought that the size of the skull corresponded to the size of the regions in their skull. So they thought it gave them good proof of criminal behavior. It began to fade away because they found out that they couldn't measure the brain based off the size of the regions. Cesar Lombroso thought that criminals were atavists. Criminals had a trait or a characteristic that reappeared from earlier generations. He had evidence for his theory. He went to Italian prisons and measured prisoners' bodies and compared them to Italian soldiers. Lombroso concluded that prisoners looked like primitive men rather than modern men. Charles Darwin's evolution theory was so popular at the same time that Lombroso did this view on criminal behavior. Lombroso's view became very popular as well. However, Lombroso's theory had an imperfection. The Italian criminal justice system at the time was not a fair one. So many of the prisoners that he measured probably did not commit a crime. By the end of his career, he modified his theory on atavism. Lombroso was one of the few scientists that actually studied women. Lombroso said that women were atavists. He claimed that even the female criminal is monotonous and uniform compared with the male companion, just as in general women is inferior to men. He also thought that women had some traits in common with children, and women were revengeful and jealous. Lombroso thought a woman was worse than men. Lombroso thought women was worse than men because of their defects. Most modern researchers consider Lombroso's views outdated, but his research still remains influential. Ernest Houghton compared to the control group, prisoners tended to have low foreheads, crooked noses, narrow jaws, small ears, long necks, and stooped shoulders. Houghton labeled criminals organically inferior and low-grade human organisms, and also said that one of the main causes of crime is biological inferiority. The body shapes of the criminals had an influence on the types of criminal behavior they committed. Tall and thin are murderers. Rapists were short and heavy. Men that were average didn't have a specific crime. They could commit any crime. His research was said to have flaws similar to Lombroso's. He claimed that his prisoners had committed crimes and that all of his control group subjects had not committed a crime. His control group didn't represent the population adequately. His work never became popular. William Sheldon wrote a book on somatology. People's personality and crimes they commit are affected by their body shapes. Sheldon had three different types of body, or somotypes. Endomorphs are heavy, short, and have short arms and legs. Mesomorphs are athletic and muscular. This type of body tended to be aggressive and usually commit crimes that require strength and speed. And ectomorphs are thin, introverted, overly sensitive people. Sheldon had the same flaws as Lombroso and Houghton. Biologists and medical researchers noticed that criminal behavior run in families, such as other illnesses and diseases. The ideal way to study heredity and crime would be two clones from birth. Separate the two in different families and circumstances and see if they have concordance or discordance. If crime was really hereditary, then the two should have a higher level of concordance, which means a higher level in similarities in criminal behavior. The closest way to this is studying identical twins. All this evidence supports a strong genetic basis for crime. Some studies, though rare, show that identical twins that are separated at birth but live in the same type of environment will have concordance because of their environment, not because of their genetics. Many researchers say that siblings are often adopted several months after birth, so they have similar surroundings before adoption, which causes them to have concordance later on in life. The best evidence for genetic basis for criminal behavior is molecular genetics research. They look at specific genes and later look at if those genes are associated with great chance of committing a crime.
In the world of genetics, each person normally has 23 pairs of chromosomes, which means they have 46 altogether. The 23rd pair determines the sex of a child. XX means the fetus will be female, while XY means that the fetus will be a male. Regardless, the sperm carries both an X and a Y chromosome. Sometimes it could be abnormal and it will have two X's, two Y's, neither an X nor a Y, or both an X and a Y. This could result in abnormal chromosomes XXX, XYY, XO, or XXY. The chromosome that biologists are most interested in is the XYY, found in fewer than 1,000 men, who are more likely to be tall with long arms and severe acne and acquire a low intelligence, as well as are more likely than normal XY men to be arrested or imprisoned for petty thefts. Research conducted, although, shows the abnormality that it is so rare it only contributes to a fraction of crime. Males have the hormone testosterone, where endocrine glands release it into the blood, transporting it throughout the body. Combining this and the basic sex differences between males and females contribute to the large difference found in male criminal rates and women and their crime rates. And just as hormones play a role in in males, they as well play a role in females, where Katharina Dalton studied hormonal changes in women, their crime rates, and whether premenstrual syndrome is linked to it. Dalton found that half of prisoners studied reported committing their offenses in an 8-day period immediately preceding and during their menstruation. Researchers have as well concluded that adolescents who experience early puberty are correlated with the likeliness to commit delinquency acts and other antisocial behaviors for 3 reasons. They associate themselves with adolescents who are older, giving them the opportunity to get into trouble. And some maturers as well resent their parents because they look like adults, they don't have the freedom to act like adults. And the third is some experience depression and psychological problems. Mothers can also play a role in their children's future criminal behavior through prenatal problems and harmful actions such as alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, which cause harm to the development of the fetus and its central nervous system. Diet and nutrition could as well cause a role in crime and through its bodily functions. An example is in San Francisco in 1978. A city supervisor named Diane White allegedly murdered the mayor, George Moscone, and Harvey Milk. His attorney claimed that he had been eating too much junk food, where the sugar and various additives in the food deepened his depression and it reduced his abilities to tell right from wrong. Regardless of all the biological explanations and the extensive research that sometimes scientists believe, crime is just simply too diverse. Regardless that they explain some acts of violence, it cannot explain it as a whole. They as well question the relativity of deviance, meaning why an individual will turn to street crime instead of football or any activity involving physical violence.
Now I will talk about psychology and sociology and their importance in explaining crime. First, I'll talk about sociological issues. Freud talked about 3 types of personality traits that develop through the person's lifetime. First, he talked about ID, which it develops at birth, and that talks about immediate gratification. We see this through children and how they cry to receive breast milk or nap time or a hug. Ego then develops after ID, and that talks about rational thinking. Superego then develops after ego, and that talks about societal codes, such as norms, laws, and the understanding of these. Everyone has that want for immediate gratification, and most criminals have the overwhelming want for immediate gratification, and this shows that through stealing, and getting quick money. It also, his followers also talk about women having penis envy, meaning that women try to act more like men in the sense that they try for positions in which men carry at work, and they also try to take on the roles of men. Next, I'll talk about moral development, and Pigatz and Kolber talk about this. And first, talks about the development of children. The first section is sensory motor, and that happens from birth till the age of 2. And it talks about the child's learning about the child's immediate environment and also their reflexes. The next one is pre-operational, and this happens from age 2 to 7. This is where the child develops their language, learns how to draw, etc. The next section is concrete operations, and this happens from age 7 till 11. They develop logical thinking and problem solving, such as opening doors and that type of thing. The next section is formal operations, and this happens from age 7 till 15. This is talks about development of abstract thinking and thinking for themselves. Most children, they learn right from wrong from their parents by punishment and reward. They also talk about how if a kid stops at one of these developmental stages, he's more likely to become a criminal because he's not used to the understanding of their actions and that they might receive punishment for those actions. Next section is intelligence and crime. There was a study done stating that people with lower IQ have a higher crime rate. The study was done in facilities such as prisons and jails and talked about people who were incarcerated. The study also showed that white people have a 15-point higher on average IQ than African Americans. To accept this whole theory, we'd have to accept the four rules that IQ tests are valid, always valid. African Americans are an inferior race. 3, lower IQs produce higher crime rates. And 4, lower IQ in African Americans is why there's higher street crimes. To accept IQ, you'd have to accept all 4 of those principles. But the IQ theory has been disproved. Next I'll talk about personality and crime. Personality, every person has a different personality. Rorschach talked about the ink blot test, and he showed different pictures of ink blots to different people, and everyone has a different idea of what that is. He did it mostly to institutionalize people and offenders, and he found that their personalities were very angry and abrupt compared to most people. We also learned about temperament in this section, and that everybody's personality and behaviors are different. People with bad tempers are more likely to commit crimes than people with a more calm-natured temper. People use this in profiling. FBI agents to kind of gauge a characteristic of the person they're hunting down by looking at old cases and old characteristics that are similar to the case in which they're researching or conducting. Next, I'll talk about the evaluation of psychological expressions. This fills the gap of sociology. Criminals are psychologically abnormal, and Durkheim states that crime is normal. Crime is everywhere, and crime is in every facet of our life. Doesn't matter what type of person you are, there's crime in all areas, in the projects and in wealthy areas. To cure crime, we'd have to cure people, and that would have to make everyone the same. Milgram uses a test, and he showed to show that not all people are bad, and that some people just follow direction. Like some of the Nazi, his theory was that some of the Nazi guards at the imprisonment camps weren't all bad people; they were just following orders. So he issued a shock test, which, if someone got the wrong answer, they would shock them. Everyone ended up following orders to a T and shocking and causing pain to the subject. Zimbardo had a guard and prisoners test, which he stuck half the class, or the class in the basement, made half of them guards and half of them prisoners. He came back 2 days later and found out the guards were committing felonies with physical abuse, emotional abuse, and the prisoners were going insane. So today, that concludes our presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Boom. Done. I don't know. That was